All right, everyone. Ronald Grumpf said mean, evil, racist things. At least that's what unnamed sources close to the president have said. The media has done this before. This time, it's really, really out there. Like, can you imagine if this report had been made about, any past president? Nobody would believe it. They'd say, "Where's your fucking proof?" We want to know who the source is. This is something that's, pretty out there for a president of the United States to say. Essentially, the claim is this. Several people close to Trump, which means absolutely nothing. It could mean the night janitor overhearing a private conversation, or it could mean literally little green men that made a prank called MSNBC. They say, oh, Trump was angry about, the immigration thing. He got enraged, because they're trying to label him as easily enraged. He just flies off the handle for no reason, which I'm not sure why he would do that, because he's, sitting there chuckling at people. But let's assume that part, maybe he does have a temper. Who knows? What they're claiming is that he said, oh, well, about the Haitian immigrants that, are being basically prevented from coming here under certain refugee bills. He's like, oh, well, they all have AIDS. And then he talked about Nigerian immigrants and blocking them with a travel ban. He's like, oh, but they all live in huts. Suppose you're trying to tell me that a billionaire businessman with properties and ties all around the world, the same problem that he has whenever they're talking about Russia, by the way, a cosmopolitan urbanite from the middle of Manhattan with an Ivy League education and an understanding of international business is unaware of the socioeconomic situation of urban or developed centers within other countries, knows nothing about them, and basically is living in the 1800s when it comes to such things. You're trying to convince me that that's the case. Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. No, I don't think that it does. I think that this was not said. I don't think they'll have any proof of it because, it wasn't said. And I think that whoever was reporting this to the media probably just has a stick up their ass. Maybe they didn't get the Christmas bonus that they wanted. The legacy media should at some point be held by the public to some journalistic standards. Reporting on he said, she said bullcrap is not journalism. It's sensationalism. It is yellow journalism in the most literal sense. It's not muckraking. Unless you assume that Trump, unless your assumption to begin with is that Trump is unhinged, easily angered, and totally racist, it wouldn't make any sense to assume that this story was true. And yet people are sub-reporting it. Like the original report comes out, everyone else is rehashing and saying, oh, well, yeah, of course Trump would say something like that. And the people gobble up the swill because they've been lied to and propagandized, and their brains have been melted right out of their skull and dripped out of their ears to the point at which they're nothing more than a grinning vegetable. And so they don't even bother to question whether any specific report about Trump could be true. This is the one-dimensionality I spoke of. The idea of Trump's enemies is to render him into a one-dimensional cartoon caricature of a human being. A propagandized image of everything bad and wrong and backwards. So he has to be super racist. He has to be totally ignorant. He has to be easily angered. He has to be incoherent, possibly to the point of early onset dementia. He has to be crazy enough to press the little red button. He has to be generally a scary, irredeemable, backstabbing slime ball of a man, and anything short of that breaks the one-dimensionality. So they have to keep inventing this nonsense. And how do you think they're doing this? I can tell you exactly how. If the media doesn't like you, here's what they do. They get somebody, some random person who claims that they're close to you. They're actually working, for someone close to someone within the media organization. They submit an anonymous tip, and there you go. You've got your story. That's all you have to do. Or you can even infiltrate, of course, a campaign. Now, sometimes that's good, of course. Sometimes you do have a slime ball that needs to be infiltrated and revealed for the slime ball that they are. But the legacy media has become so partisan, so hacky, and so uninterested in journalism that at this point, Trump could really, really screw with them and leak tidbits of false info to them just to get them to keep being sensationalist. And they'll keep reporting on it. They're not going to miss a beat. I wouldn't be surprised if sometimes these really shitty reports about Trump being totally out there and having no idea what he's doing are coming from Trump himself. He puts on some machine to mask his voice and sends in an anonymous tip. He sends an email from his other cell phone that nobody knows he uses. He has Jared Kushner do a prank call. I wouldn't be surprised. he's taking them for fools. But in some of these cases, it's just a lack of journalism. It's outright shilling. This would not be taken, so this would not be considered acceptable by the majority of the public if it were about any other individual. If somebody had said, come out with, oh, a source close to Obama says that all white people are devils, and he's so horribly angry right now because he didn't get his way about some bill that he wanted, so he just called the Republicans all sorts of names, and he said that John Boehner, he wished that he could throw him in the Potomac and drown him. And if you made that claim based on just, hey, someone close to the president says, or someone close to the Secretary of State or some general or something says that he overheard, or says he heard from another person that was at a meeting at some point in the past, they wouldn't even report on it. And if they did, they would say, hey, this is probably not true, praise the president, basically. Oh, he would never actually say this. We're just supplying this here to show you that there are people that are really angry at Mr. Obama. Or about any other president. Bill Clinton, even Bush. They wouldn't have done this to George W. They look back. I thought this was interesting. With that Pew study they did a few months ago, when they were analyzing the first 100 days of media coverage of the last few presidents, even George W., a genocidal, incoherent freak of nature who almost ruined this country and turned us into a chunk of the third world, or started a world war in his first few days in office. Even a freak like him got more favorable coverage than Trump has gotten. What specifically is their beef with him other than, and this is of course the revelation of why, other than the fact that he doesn't play nice with them, scoops them on Twitter, and won't give them an interview? What other problem would they have with him? It can't possibly be policy related. As we see, a lot of these people that are proclaiming to be holier than thou, and they're like, oh, Trump is, basically a rapist because he's Billy Bush stuff. It turns out half of these people are themselves total perverts, so they're not worried about the sexism. As far as the more racist stuff, there's no legitimate reason, and never has been, to consider him racist. There never has been in all of the history of his life. If you go back in time to the 1990s, he was held up almost as a virtuous standard within business. Yeah, cutthroat, yeah, he'll stab you in the back to build a skyscraper, but ultimately he cares a bit more than most of these magnates and con men in some cases about the working class. He doesn't look down his nose at minorities, actually integrates things more because he's only interested in money. Look, you can't make fortunes and be solely interested in egotism and money and be like a total bigot. It's impossible. You're ignoring the talent of significant chunks of the population. No, I'm not going to hire women, I'm not going to hire minorities and stuff. Okay, your talent pool has shrunk. Statistics aside, it won't matter. Your talent pool is smaller. You are at a disadvantage. It's not the point of capitalism anyway. What capitalism that actually goes on. The other part is you have to learn how to suck off the government. Of course, Trump was donating big time to those people. He donated bigly, mainly to Democrats. I think they forgot this. Yeah, Trump doesn't know anything about Nigeria. Okay, yeah, of course, that makes total sense. Yeah, he got where he is, building things often in other countries by knowing nothing about those other countries. Absolutely nothing, other than Russia. That makes total sense. He's buddy-buddy with them, knows everything about Russian culture, probably speaks fluent, Moscow dialect, but he's totally ignorant when it comes to all of these other people. He's racist. Okay, so when he works in Asia, especially, countries where whites are either absent or a very small minority, does that make a lot of sense? Seems to like working over there more than he does in Europe. I wonder why. Could it be because the business climate's better? Yeah, he can go make a lot more money in India than he can ever make in the UK at this point. Or certainly, he'd lose money if he built something in Germany. Yeah, because they'll just, they won't make people pay rent. They'll just, they'll nationalize his hotel, and then they'll use it as a refugee center. So, he'd be down shit creek without a paddle. He wouldn't be getting any money from Angela Merkel. He can't even talk to her. He would work in Latin America, Africa too. Yeah, he probably would go over and build a skyscraper in Lagos, but that would break the caricature that's been built of him. If people assume that he's bigoted and incoherent and ignorant, Bigoted, incoherent, ignorant people who know nothing about other countries don't do well in doing business in other countries, I would assume, generally speaking. There might be some exceptions. There's no particular reason to assume that to be the case, and there's not any proof that he said this. It is propaganda. Unless there is an actual source that's willing to be named and say, yes, I overheard this, or you have a recording, shut up about it. That's not news. It's not journalism. And they'll come out and people who criticize and they'll say, well, you're attacking the free press. It's all right to report on this tip that we got. You would never have done, under no standard of ethics in journalism would you have reported on this if it were anybody else. If this were some random business leader, some other politician, you would be reluctant to publish the story. If you did, it would be with a page-long disclaimer in front of it. But because it's Donald Trump, and because he scoops you on Twitter and you're pissed off that he pissed in your cornflakes, you're just going to report anything that you happen to hear about him. Because to you, he's one-dimensional. He's the ultimate evil. You've made him basic. I guess he's the replacement for Charles Manson at this point. Someone so utterly beyond redemption that anyone who speaks of a positive quality must be some sort of fanatical cult member or something. It's gotten to that weird point. And it's partially successful, at least with the Democratic partisans. They believe it. Hook, line, and sinker, they've gobbled the bait. And they'll keep believing it. Like, there's no way to break their cognitive dissonance. Trump's only real advantage in that sense is that the business Democrats primarily care about their wallets and the middle class, and he's doing very well by what will become, I think, their monetary standards. That's how he ends up winning, by the way. Now, he's not going to win over, at this point, any chance of winning over, like, the millennial youth is long past for the Trump campaign. Branding himself as an anti-establishment outsider aside, it didn't work, at least with that segment of the voting public. It only worked to bring the business Democrats aboard. Like the Reagan Democrats, literally speaking. People sort of went yuppie mode for a while there. Then they got shit on by Bush and Obama, and then they went back to being kind of Democrats for a while. That's his advantage. But this is not journalism. It's like if somebody randomly came to me. Think of it this way. I'm basically part of the alt media. That's sort of what I'm doing here right now. If somebody were to message me and say, hey, some other YouTuber, some major YouTuber, I overheard a private stream that they were doing with one of their friends, like, I was there, and they said, X, Y, and Z, and it was, like, really shitty, or it was something, like, really out there. Would I make a video about that? No, because it may not be true. The person might have a personal vendetta. It might be total nonsense that they've concocted themselves. It could be that the other person is just trying to get free publicity. Or it could be that the other person's trying to fuck with me, wants me to do something false, so that then they can go out and say, hey, this is actually wrong, and he's shilling against me for some reason. Those are all possibilities. Why would I want to talk about it? It wouldn't make any sense. There's no journalism standard there. There's no ethics there. It's not moral either. Now, not that they care about morals, but, Sadly, I think at this point, random YouTubers and bloggers have more ethical credibility than most people that are so-called journalists within sort of the corporate, the business news, the CNNs, the New York Times, these groups that pride themselves in being, we're the press, we're so wonderful, an intrinsic part of the country literally written about in the Constitution, which is only half true. We're so wonderful. But, journalism be damned. We're just basically going to use the Constitution as an excuse to defame other individuals that we happen not to like. They do this to the alt media too. They've begun to do it to, like, entertainers, WSJ with PewDiePie, Right Wing Watch with me, or Sargon or somebody, the New York Times with YouTube in general, write-ups about people on Twitter. It happens now almost every day, which was exactly what I said would happen, because they're trying to do anything to not have to compete directly with us, because they know that they'll lose. We're too numerous and too efficient, and we're too interesting compared to reading a fucking piece of paper with some ink on it. Honestly, that's not very fun. It's not very entertaining. The New York Times be damned. Watching cable, you can't even interact with it. No, the internet's definitely way better for most intents and purposes, including for publishing at this point with POD and things like that. You can work with all sorts of publishers. It's a wonderful thing, actually, to tell the truth. But no, they would never have reported on this. If something similar were spewed about anyone other than Donald Trump, there's no way in hell they would have reported on it. If it were an Obama, or even a Bush, certainly a Bill Clinton or something like that, they never would have said it. Never. Not in a million years. Even the worst of them would never have stooped to that level for anybody but Donald Trump. That's about all. Peace out.